All right, everybody, welcome back to the SCB Steelers Podcast presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. The NFL Combine is underway. I always hear the term Combine, and I imagine a bunch of John Deere tractors going across a football field or something. But nevertheless, that's not what's happening.
Thanks for your Midwestern insight, Mark.
Thank you. Yes.
It was nice.
Plowing for to plant corn, boys and girls. Derek, one of our SCB guys, is actually there. He's been interviewing some of the players, and I posted some of his tweets on the website today. So he's loving it. He's having a great time down there, doing a good job. He does some stuff for us, but his bigger gig is SI.com. So he's doing great. You can see if you're watching the show that Ben, Ian, and Ryan have joined me tonight. If you are listening on audio, well, you're going to hear them eventually. We are very proud to be part of the Pigskin Podcast Network and, of course, through DraftKings as well. So, gentlemen, I hope you are well. The most important question of all this evening is, what are you drinking? Ian?
I am drinking some delicious Bradshaw bourbon in a Bradshaw bourbon glass.
Oh, very nice.
It showed up in my mailbox. How about that?
A Bradshaw bourbon glass.
A Bradshaw bourbon glass. Yeah. So for those that are watching online, you can see the Bradshaw bourbon in the glass.
Yes, it is nice. Yes. And Ben, what are you drinking tonight?
Profuse juice, which is a hazy from 10 Barrel. It's Profuse delicious. Juice. And I've got a bunch of whiskey because I just had a birthday, and I still have whiskey. I still have birthday whiskey from last year.
That's a good problem to have.
This is insane.
Did you get any new whiskeys for your birthday?
Oh, yeah.
Anything new?
Yeah. My friends are pretty good to me. They
Excellent.
Really hooked me up. I seriously, I was like, wow, you guys, okay, thanks. Got to step up my game.
Congratulations on being old.
Thanks. Yeah. Appreciate that.
Scarps, what do you got going there tonight for your beverage of choice?
Vodka soda.
Vodka soda. Out of a gym water bottle.
You drink a protein shake, take the blender ball out of it. You're good.
Love it.
Because it's a great big bottle. What does it hold? 30 ounces or something?
I don't tell anybody. It's 32 ounces.
Just last week we went over the offensive roster and kind of who's coming back, who's not, who's on the bubble, who needs to do what kind of a thing, and we'll do that with the defense. Just a couple of notes here, real quick. We were all, I think, most of us were under the impression that ESPN's Louis Riddick had interviewed for the general manager spot a couple weeks ago. It turns out that he actually interviewed just this week in Indianapolis for the first time. And, again, Steelers aren't saying much about that, and they won't until, of course, they actually make a decision. But that happened. And so what was the other thing, too? And of course, hey, it's the combine season. If you have listened or seen anything on the Steelers today, you probably – have seen more about the size of one man's hand than you ever will again.
I don't know, man. Remember when Joe Burrow had the 9-inch hands, and that was the same thing?
Oh, well, yeah, it clearly humbled and kept him from doing stuff.
Didn't it?
We're not gonna dwell on it now. We got 2 months to talk draft, and we'll do that much more. But Kenny Pickett, came in with 8.5-inch hands. Normally, you to see a minimum of 9. What kind of whiskey is that?
Wright and Brown?
No, looks very
I'm
fancy.
Sure it's fancy as fuck.
Yeah,
because I'm classy and shit.
Well, we expect nothing less. Anyway, so we're going to get this thing rolling tonight and talk a little defense. And part of that is also, I guess, part of the news cycle too. And we'll start on the defensive line. Ryan, I'll start with you. Stephon Tuitt. I mean, I think every single person here and most people that are Steelers fans wants Stephon Tuitt to be back. to be a positive, dominant force that he can be as a defensive lineman. We understand he had a personal tragedy. We understand he had a knee injury and stuff. How long do the Steelers wait until they say, okay, Stephon, I need an answer now?
That's a great question. I think that, I think that, they've obviously been in contact with Stephon throughout all of this. He's not a new player.
Mm-hmm.
He's obviously been with the team for a good while now. He is a veteran, obviously a great player as well. Has obviously relationships with Cam Hayward and others, Tyson, Lulu, and anyone else in the organization that's been there that long, and there's not really that many of those guys around anymore. So I think the Steelers are treating this in a personal way and in a business way. They're there. Obviously, they're there for Stephon in any way that he needs, and they're obviously conscious of his off the field tragedy, but also it's a business, and they understand that if he's committed 100%, I think that's a different story. But I don't necessarily know at this time where they think he's at. Art the second a couple weeks ago didn't sound so optimistic. Kevin Colbert in the last couple days, I don't know if he necessarily sounded optimistic as much as he basically just reiterated that they're talking with him. But this is it's hard to say, but sooner rather than later, I think that they need to have that conversation because free agency is about to come up, the draft's about to come up, and at the end of the day, they people that handle that cap situation are above my pay grade. But I'm sure there's some sort of there's obviously a monetary consequence of this too. But again, if he's in 100%, I get it. But if he's not there, you have to be open to exploring what options you have.
Ben, how much does his availability affect what the Steelers want to do? And I was going to say draft, but I'll say both draft and free agency.
Yeah. I mean, basically, if they don't know he's coming back, they have to approach this as though he's not. But Cam Hayward mentioned him by name today on NFL Network.
Right.
And said that he was really excited to be getting him back, that this was going to be a monster defense. So that's encouraging. I agree with everything Ryan said. Nothing definitive from Colbert, nothing definitive from Art. But I also look at it from the standpoint that this time of year, Colbert lies all the time. Lies his ass off. And then
it's the smoke season.
And then when all is said and done, he's like, yeah, well, I was lying. So what do you want?
Right.
This is, I'll lie to you again next year. And,
done it for 20 years.
Yeah. So it could be that they're not sure, and it could be that they know something and we don't know shit, and they're not going to tell us. So
right.
Until I guess maybe I'm getting old, or I'm accepting the fact that the Steelers are not going to be that great next year. And so I'm just I'm waiting to see. And I'm not going to get too worked up over it one way or the other until there's something definitive from Tuitt or from the Steelers that says he's definitely coming back or he's definitely not. But if they don't know for sure, they need to approach this as though he's not, and get somebody in there to take his spot. And granted, you're probably not going to get a free agent of the same quality as a Stephon Tuitt, but you can get somebody pretty good. You can get somebody better against the run versus Chris Wermley. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and Ian, that's where I was going to go next. If you've got some comments on Tuitt, by all means, but I was going to go to Wermley next. A guy that they traded for from Baltimore, and he had a few moments, mostly I guess in the pass rush department.
Rusher. Yeah.
But as a run stuffer, I mean, go ahead.
Chris Wermley is not a starting defensive lineman. He's a rotational piece that you can plug in for a handful of snaps a game to give other guys a break, but he's not an every down defensive lineman. I wasn't a big fan of them giving him a contract. I mean, they traded for him. He had 1 year left on his deal. And then they kind of doubled down on their mistake of trading for him and signed him to an extension, a 2-year deal. And he, I'll say, at times did exceed my expectations last year. Chris Wermley against Baltimore was outstanding.
Yeah.
Now, if we could get that Chris Wermley every game, that would be amazing. But he was kind of extra motivated that game because they were the ones that traded him away. That said, I would love to see Montravius Adams back. That would be a great his get off the ball, his ability to actually get down the line on some of those outside zone plays was like something that we didn't have in the middle before he came. Right. Having Tyson Alualu healthy would be outstanding. I agree with everything that's already been said on Tuitt. I mean, that is the biggest question facing the defense this year is what happens with Stephon Tuitt. And, that has to be answered before anything else can kind of fall into place. I think Isaiah Loudermilk is a growing piece. I think he can be a very solid rotational guy. I don't think he's ready to be an every down starter yet, but there's definitely a lot more upside there than I saw when we first drafted him. He definitely played better last year than I thought he would. I kind of thought, here's another wasted 5th round pick. But he actually looked pretty darn good last year at times. His arrow is definitely pointing up. The two guys that, I really don't know if there's a space for on this team, which Henry Mondu, fine. He doesn't have to be here. He doesn't really bring a whole lot. But Isaiah Buggs, we cut last year, and then Carlos Davis is, we picked him in the 7th round. He's kind of hung around. He looked okay in the preseason. Then he got injured.
Yeah.
We do need some depth here because our starters are all getting old. I mean, Hayward, Alu, and Tuitt are all on the wrong side of 30. Alualu's on the wrong side of 35.
Right.
We do have to get younger on the defensive line. So I would not be surprised at all to see us look in the draft for a younger defensive lineman. I don't think signing guys in free agency is hard because you're either getting starters that you have to pay a lot of money for, or you're looking at depth pieces like Chris
Wermley guys.
Chris Wermley. Yeah, exactly. So, and neither of those are really what we need right now. So, because if Tuitt comes back, you have your 3 starters. Loudermilk can be your 4th guy. You bring Adams back to be your 5th and to be your inside piece too. And those are a pretty good starting 5 or top 5 on the defensive line for a rotation, but you also kind of need, some more youth and depth there. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see us draft a defensive lineman or 2, depending on what happens with Tuitt at some point in the draft.
I think the fascinating thing to me is, and it's so hard because we don't know, free agency will start in 2 weeks. We don't know the direction they're going to go in free agency. Are they going to focus heavy on cornerbacks, let's say? Are they going to focus on offensive line? Now, they got enough money to do a little of both, don't get me wrong. But, something is going to need significant attention in the draft. And the Tuitt question will certainly go a long way towards that. Ryan,
I think,
go ahead, Ben.
I think that Tuitt, absolutely, I agree with everything that has been said and you just said. My question mark is still Tyson Alualu. He's 35.
Yep.
He's coming off a broken ankle. Word was that he was close to being able to play at the end of the season. That if they had gone deeper into the playoffs, they would have considered trying to activate him. Yada, yada, blah, blah. I find it really interesting, though, that they cut Isaiah Buggs after he started 6 games and kept Carlos Davis, who was injured all season. That kind of tells you what they think of Buggs or what they thought he brought to the team. And granted, it was a numbers game. It was bodies. But has Davis done anything that is really impressive? I don't think so. Obviously Montravius Adams, we all agree they should definitely bring him back to be a spot starter, to be a guy who gives Alualu relief. But Is he really a starter either?
Yeah.
In my opinion, no.
No. I agree. Bugs, I thought he was okay. I was just surprised by that.
I thought he was okay as a 2-gap nose tackle.
Yeah,
I don't think he didn't do much else.
No.
But neither does Davis. Davis doesn't do anything.
Just one final point.
Yeah.
Kevin had mentioned that the draft is not deep when it comes to defensive linemen.
Yeah.
So that Tuitt situation, and Tuitt's 28, and so is Wermley. So Tuitt is not quite 30 yet, but we know what he can bring to the table. But it sort of circles back to the decision whether he's coming back or not, because if he doesn't come back and you don't get a defensive lineman in free agency and the draft isn't deep, unless you take a D lineman early, you're probably looking at another Isaiah Buggs, Carlos Davis type. And I'm looking at their roster right now, and they got 4 or 5 of those types.
Yeah.
So it's like, again, this Tuitt situation, is very, very, very.
When all of you were talking, my initial thought right out of the gate was if Tuitt is coming back, they go, okay, we're good. We'll take some guy and we'll develop him, and it'll be fine. If he's not, it changes the whole draft strategy and free agency strategy. Now they've got to add a piece that can play this year. They've got to add a guy who can come in and contribute this year, which means either a high draft pick or I wouldn't say a premium free agent, but a guy who can play right away.
Yes.
And don't get excited, Steelers fans. J.J. Watt's not coming.
No. It's not going to happen, but how good would that kid from Georgia look on our defensive line?
Oh, he looked great, but
he looked phenomenal just sitting there in the middle.
Oh, man.
Oh, man. He would just, I believe me, watching Georgia, their last couple of games, I fantasized a little bit about that. I mean, that cat sitting there in the black and gold.
Oh, yeah. Although
I think he's really good versus the run. I do not like him that much versus the pass. It's a passing league.
True.
I think he's going to be, unless he can work on his quicks and develop them, I think he's going to be a 2-down player.
Is that
So what you're saying is everybody should let him fall to like the 3rd round, and then we can take Jordan Davis.
Sure,
there you go.
Yeah,
I mean, but is that what's happening with nose tackles though? I mean, they're generally not 3-down guys.
No, they're not. But a nose tackle. Tackle for the Steelers has got to be able to play defensive tackle as well.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And play on 3rd down when they only have 2 down linemen. They've got to have some versatility. That's one of the knocks on Adams is that he's just a nose tackle.
Limited. Yeah.
But by the same token, he's coming in cold off of the Saints practice squad, learning a new defense, learning all his keys and fits. And what did he have? 6 weeks with the team? I can't even remember. So, yeah.
Well, and think about how long it took Javon Hargrave to be able to learn the other position to be able to play on 3rd downs. Like for years, we all talked about like, hey, Javon Hargrave is really quick off the ball. Right. Why isn't he playing on 3rd downs and giving these other guys some spells? And it took him to his 4th year for them to actually trust him enough to put him at the other position rather than just over the center.
No, it was his 3rd year, but his 4th year he was really effective.
He was. Yeah. But it took. I'm saying it took him time, right?
Yeah.
So Adams has the physical ability, I think, to do it. It's just the learning curve of being able to, like you said, learn the fits and all that.
Right.
And my follow-up thought, though, is if I had to pick one player from Georgia's defense to put on the Steelers, it would be N'Kobe Dean, not Jordan Davis. But
that'd be nice. That isn't going to happen either.
It's not going to happen.
We're going to transition over to the linebackers here in just a second. First, let me remind you, this is the SCB Steelers Podcast presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated of South Florida. DEK serves Broward and the Southern Palm Beach counties, whether it's commercial, industrial, residential, multi-family, can't talk, or condos. Contact DEK Roofing today by visiting dekroofing.com.
Hey, Ian, they do multifamily.
You're sure they do multifamily, though?
I am 100% positive. Yes. I've asked. I've now gotten confirmation of that.
Okay.
That's good.
Yes. Linebackers. Ryan, I'm just going to throw this phone to you right now. Joe Schobert, what do you do with him, man?
There you go.
I mean, I'm sure he's a really nice person. He seems like a really good teammate. His wife is active on social, and she seems like a very nice person too.
And they're active in the community too.
And if any of the Schobert fans or Schobert family are watching, this is nothing against him, but I think that he is a cap casualty. I'm not going to say I hated the trade, because and Tomlin has said this, it was just basically he was available, Yeah. But I would say that if Cleveland doesn't re-sign you and Jacksonville, even with Urban Meyer, doesn't necessarily want you, I don't really know, where you go from there. And like I said, I thought he had his moments. I thought he was okay, but that defense overall just wasn't, besides maybe a couple guys, TJ Watt, Cam, and Minka. I thought that he was more Slobert than Schobert. Again, no disrespect to him, but he is an easy cap casualty, and I hope he signs somewhere else.
Steelers gained $7.8 million against the cap, and almost a little bit over $9 million in cash if they cut him. So I agree, it's not a difficult decision.
Is it disappointing because obviously he didn't play well, but he played pretty well against us when he played on other teams? I mean, is it disappointing in a large part because he didn't play to that level for us? Any of you can jump in on that.
Disappointing.
That's what I felt.
Disappointing from my standpoint that he wasn't a better cover linebacker.
Yeah.
That was what we really needed out of him. We needed a guy who could run sideline to sideline and cover tight ends and running backs.
Yeah.
And maybe the occasional slot receiver who, he happened to be hung up on. I didn't really need a guy who could stop the run, which he couldn't do either.
Right.
He didn't think that was what you needed anyway.
For a guy who had like 100+ tackles every year of his career.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. But he did because the defensive lineman in front of him would take care of the blockers and consume them. This year, that was not happening with our D-line. We had one defensive lineman. Let's be honest. We had one defensive lineman against the run game. And you got linebackers that are trying to penetrate on top of that. So it left a bunch of free blockers to take out Bush and Schobert. And our inside linebackers did not play well. They just didn't. It was what it was, man.
Yeah. So, Ian, if they kept Schobert, would we take that, therefore, that the problems that he had, therefore, must have been a bigger issue for the defensive line than for him?
I don't think we're keeping Schobert. I don't see.
I don't either, but I'm just. Yeah.
Never know.
No, that's my point.
But, I mean, the one thing I'll give him maybe is that when he came in, they gave him the green dot. They took it off Devin Bush and gave it to him.
Right.
To call the defense, set things up, things like that. So
because he was going to play on third down.
Yeah. Yeah. Which we saw how that worked out too.
Yeah. Worked out great.
Yeah.
Sarcasm.
Yeah. I mean, I really struggled to see how, we keep Joe Schobert at a, $9.7 million cap hit number. It just, it doesn't play out. If he was willing to take a pay cut to stay here and for like half of that, maybe it's worth considering because, I mean, cover linebackers are hard to find. They're worth their weight in gold.
Would he get that on the open market right now?
No.
Well, he's not going to get
$10 million on the open market.
Not after last year.
No.
After his last two seasons, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Give me a guy that's younger, that's faster, and you can mold at any point. And that's the thing. He's 28, and you're right. I am a little bit disappointed that he wasn't better for us. What was that? That tie game in Cleveland, he was everywhere.
He was.
And I'm like, damn, this dude's good. And then I just again, I like Ben said, I think, is as much as we hate the Browns, I think that their line was a little bit. They were decent, I would say that they were decent, and the Browns suck. I get it, but they had their defensive line hasn't been bad during the time.
Right. They've had some guys there,
yeah. So, and I would just, I was a little bit disappointed, but like, the Steelers knew what they were doing, and Kevin Colbert and Coach Tomlin and Art have made this perfectly clear that they weren't thinking of losing. They were thinking of competing, and he was available, and they were like, you know what, we can work with this for this year financially. He's and then of course, hey, he went to Wisconsin with TJ Watt. Like, and it was like, and it's like, no, that doesn't always mean that things are going to work out. Yeah. Like, that's not how it always works.
I think that Steelers fans were super excited because they had those memories of him as a Browns linebacker and thought that he was going to be effective within this defense, which I understand. I have the same initial thoughts. So, it is what it is. I am looking. Everybody wants a quarterback. I want Devin Lloyd in the first round because realistically, that's going to be the best player available at that spot.
And inside linebacker in this draft is neither deep nor shallow. And if you take away Joe Schobert, you're looking at a lot of young guys, and you need to figure out how to solidify that position because we don't know what we're getting from Devin Bush. We know that Bobby Spillane is going to smack you in the mouth, but not be able to cover anyone.
Right.
Buddy Johnson might be good. Ulysses Gilbert might be good. And then you got your sort of hybrid in your Marcus Allen. But yeah, in my opinion, they need to find another, and whether that's later in the draft or whatnot, but we need a guy that can cover tight ends and slot guys, but also we need another type of Vince Williams. We need a Vince Williams type because that linebacker isn't dead yet. And especially in that 3-4, that hard-nosed linebacker.
Vince was pretty good at blitzing too, though.
Yeah. Vince was not a one-trick pony. That was a big loss last year too. Even though he's a little bit older, it was timely, and I do think that definitely hurt the defense as well.
Yeah, a little bit.
So on the linebacker front, though, it's interesting you bring that up because there are a couple guys like who are a little bit older, basically going to be 30, that are going to hit the free agent market.
Don't say Hightower.
No, Hightower's older than that. No, I was going to say Anthony Hitchens from the Chiefs, who is pretty much just a run stopper at this point. Christian Kirksey from the Texans, who racks up a ton of tackles, but is pretty much just a run stopper at this point. But if you want guys who are a little bit older, who may only be 2-down players that you might be able to get on a 1-year deal, like those are the names you start to look at in free agency. A guy I like is Dorian O'Daniel, who was drafted by the Chiefs. He played at Clemson. He was in that draft where there was the year after Shazier got hurt and we didn't take an inside linebacker at all in the whole draft.
That's right.
O'Daniel played pretty well for the Chiefs in kind of the spots that he played in, but now that they've, drafted some other guys, they're full up at inside linebacker. I could see him trying to test the market and see if he can go somewhere. But the really interesting question for me is, that same draft, right? The one that we didn't draft anyone, that there were guys in the first, there were 4 linebackers in the first round and none of them made it to us. Supposedly we loved Leighton Vander Esch and Tomlin really loved Rashawn Evans, who went to the Texans. Right. Both of those guys are going to be free agents this year. Vander Esch hasn't played up to what we thought his potential was in Dallas. He's been injured a bit, but he just hasn't played well on the field. Evans, I don't know. He's been kind of hit and miss in Tennessee, but if he's going to, Tomlin loved that dude in the draft. Like he loved him. Do we think they take a shot at him in free agency?
I'm telling you this, and hate me if you want it. I know they have money for the first time in forever, but Kevin has talked about not sort of changing their MO.
Yeah, I know.
So O'Daniel, it was an O'Daniel that O'Doyle rules. No, but the kid from the Chiefs.
Good reference.
The kid from the Chiefs would be more up the Steelers' alley than a guy like Rashad Evans. So, like, I'm just
Evans was refused a fifth-year option by the Texans. He's not highly regarded. He's not going to be a high-priced free agent. He's not. He's got raw ability, but he hasn't been super effective. In fact, neither was Leighton Vander Esch, and it was because
been hurt a lot too.
Yeah, he's hurt a lot. That's the issue. He's effective when he plays, but he's not on the field enough. So, yeah, I mean, basically, these guys, they're not going to get big contracts. They're going to be there for the taking if you want them. But do you want them? I don't know. Evans, maybe. Yeah, depending on what he would be willing to take in terms of contract and what the terms were like, what the structure was like. Yeah, maybe.
So I'll say this, since we're talking free agents, I'm generally of the opinion that there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal, because you can sign a guy for a year and then kind of see what happens.
Yeah.
As an extension of that, something that the Steelers have typically done is they call it a 2-year deal, but it's essentially a 1-year deal with a team option where
they all are.
Yeah. You know, you get 1 year in your signing bonus, and then your second year is at a much higher number. So if you play well,
Chris Wermley's contract's like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Zach Banner's contract was like that. A lot of guys' contracts have been like that. That, you know, Zach Banner was signing bonus and veteran minimum for the first year, and then $5-6 million salary the second year. Five. So yeah, I mean, something like that, you know, which is essentially a 1-year deal with a team option for the second year. I'd be fine with those kind of structures with any of those guys I mentioned. You know, come play for a year. We'll see if you're any good, if you have any potential. If not, you're gone. And
no, I agree.
We'll go from there.
I'm on board with that.
But I mean, the other thing is, all those guys I mentioned, I think, are at least 28 years old. So if you're looking at an inside linebacker group, like Ryan accurately said, that has a lot of youth in it, that you want some kind of older veteran leadership as part of that, any of those guys kind of fit the bill.
Yeah.
Except maybe O'Daniel. He hasn't had the playing time of the rest of them, but he's going to be 28. So, you know, but nevertheless, I do agree that he does kind of fit there. You know, a guy who was kind of a spot player with another team that just the numbers didn't work for him there, and hit the free agent market, and maybe you can get you know, you can cash in and find something there. Like I talked about with Shaq Barrett a few years ago. I was like, we need to sign this dude. He's been like languishing with the Chiefs.
Yeah,
and then
Broncos.
Then Tampa signed him.
That's right.
Yeah, the Broncos. Sorry, wrong AFC West team. But yeah, he was languishing with the Broncos behind their two very. I mean, they had Von Miller and who else? What was the guy's name?
Where?
Then the Bucs signed him, and he had a 20-sack season. And
would have been where,
you know,
Marcus.
Yeah. So
what about our outside linebackers?
Well, I'm going to transition to that right now, but I do want to alert everyone to our good friends at DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code TPPN, where you bet just $1 on any NBA team and get $150 in free bets if they win. That's promo code TPPN at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the National Basketball Association. And we're doing that because the NFL is, they don't have games right now. So check that out. DraftKings Sportsbook app. It's awesome. Very easy to use. Got one myself.
Don't bet on my Lakers right now. They're sleepwalking.
Man,
they're sleepwalking. They don't care.
Wait, you're a Lakers fan and you give me shit about being a Duke fan? Hold on a minute.
Here we go.
Ian,
it just got real.
I've been a Lakers fan since Norm Nixon was the point guard, and when they drafted Magic Johnson, I was like, you can't do that to Norm Nixon. He's an all-star. And then Magic played, and I was like, oh, yeah, you can.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
All right. Well, I've been a Duke fan since I was 6 years old, and Christian Laettner hit the shot. So
Christian Laettner's a fucking douchebag, and that's why people hate Duke. People hate Duke because of Christian fucking Laettner. Didn't you know that?
I love Duke because of Christian Laettner.
And Duke fans are basically Dallas Cowboys fans who like college basketball, and everybody fucking hates Dallas Cowboys fans. Everybody knows this, Ian.
Hey, how's
poor
Pitt,
children? My God, you're poor kids. You don't even know any better.
How's Pitt doing in basketball this year?
They suck. They're
That's
terrible.
They got beat by 30 or 40 by Duke the other night, didn't they?
30, yeah.
Anywho, outside linebackers, guys, is not going to take us very long to talk about because you got T.J. Watt.
Who's that guy? What's his name?
Got Alex Highsmith. Yeah, who are these two guys? And you've got also. Well, no, you don't have garbage. You've got Ben's favorite outside linebacker reserve. No, I'm talking about one Mr. Derek Tuska.
Yeah, he should be cut tomorrow.
Fuck
that guy.
Taco. Do they bring Taco back, Ben?
They should.
He's on the D line.
They should bring Taco back.
I thought he was okay.
No, Taco's an outside linebacker, and he, in my opinion, at least today, he should be the number 3 outside linebacker.
Yeah, I agree.
But, we'll see what happens.
Right.
I would like to see them improve depth there.
So, sorry. Good.
Yeah, go ahead, Ryan.
No, I'm good.
Steal that. No, I'm gonna say this. So let's just say T.J. Watt plays a full season next year, and he only gets like 14 sacks, which is yes. But my point being is that how can they what kind of depth can they add in case teams figure out TJ? So like I look at I mean Alex and TJ are good at 1-2 punch, great tandem. I think they're really really good. Arguably top 2 in the league, but after that, I'm fine with Taco coming back. I don't necessarily know if Taco. I mean, you gotta laugh thinking of just eating a taco, but like I don't know if he necessarily ever had like the foundation, like going to the Cowboys. I don't know if that was the right culture or fit for him, but I do think a guy like Mike Tomlin and the Steelers organization might be a better fit for him. So I'd like to see him back. But then,
valid point.
But then there's the draft and and I know it might sound silly, but John Simon is he's on the roster. He's 31. I'm not saying that he's a contributor, but a guy that you keep around through camp. He's a veteran. He's played for the Giants and Patriots. I think so. Yes. So but again, you need to get a fourth person in there that's not no disrespect to Derek Cousins.
You got Tigray Scales.
And
he can play both, apparently.
Don't forget about Delonte Scott from Southern Methodist University as well.
Well, when you think outside linebackers, you think SMU, baby.
Listen.
Yeah, Ian, would you prefer they draft or would you prefer they go free agent here? To add depth.
To add depth. I mean, I think you can find guys in free agency, but you're going to pay them a lot. I would actually prefer drafting. But here's the thing I'll say with drafting. With drafting, you especially without edge rushers, you should always gamble on athleticism over collegiate production. We learned this lesson with specifically Jarvis Jones versus Bud Dupree and TJ Watt, specifically like Bud Dupree, right? And Dupree took a little while to come around, but he got there. Jones never did. Jones, highly productive college player, led the nation in sacks his senior year, tested terribly athletically, didn't produce in the NFL. Bud Dupree didn't really produce a whole lot in college. Right. Athletic freak, had a learning curve in the NFL, but once he got there, damn, did he get there? And he battled some health issues, some injuries, things like that too. But I mean, when he was healthy and on the field and at his peak, holy shit. And I actually wrote an article, I think a couple years ago on SteelCityBlitz.com. Look up early impact pass rushers. You can find it. But there's certain athletic thresholds. So as people are watching the combine with edge rushers, basically I looked at guys who hit 10 plus sacks like within their first 2 years in the league, which is pretty hard to do. There's not many guys that get there. Most guys hit their peak their third year and on. So like early impact pass rushers getting there within the first 2 years to 10 plus sacks is significant. And I'll say the 10 plus sack threshold has been something that's been pretty consistent over time. Like from I look back to like 97, 98 through, or 2000 maybe through like 2020, 2021. You usually get between like 15 and 20 guys that get 10 plus sacks a year. So it's a pretty consistent statistic over time of who are the elite pass rushers, and guys that get there early in their career typically have most of these athletic thresholds. They're over 250 pounds. They're at least 6'3". They ran a 40 faster than 4.8 seconds. They had a broad jump more than 118 inches. They did their 20-yard shuttle or 3-cone drill, whatever you want to call it, in faster than 4.4 seconds, and put up at least 20 reps on the bench press. And I'll say specifically that was the shuttle. Sorry, 3 cones different, but 4.4 on the shuttle. But 3 cones, if you get under like 6.9 seconds on the 3-cone drill, that's also a highly valid correlation for being a good pass rusher.
Huge.
So as you're watching the combine, keep an eye on some of those numbers for the edge rushers. And some of those guys, like say Max Crosby, hit a bunch of those numbers, but went in the 4th round, right? So actually that article I did, I just looked it up back in 2019. Max Crosby was on my list of a guy that hit like all those thresholds except for the bench press. So those are the guys you want to gamble on wherever it is in the draft that they fall, but gamble on the guys with athleticism, not on the guys that are highly productive in college.
Okay.
No, it's very true, and it continues to add up more and more. When you look at that.
Done.
Let's transition over to let's do cornerbacks first. Cam Sutton is entrenched, whether he's on the boundary or playing a nickel spot. Joe Hayden is a free agent. Akello Witherspoon, another guy that's a free agent. Is there Ben? Is there a concern that Witherspoon might want too much to stay with the Steelers?
Well, it's a concern, but
he really came on, and
the bigger concern is the fact that the Steelers are only going to re-sign one of them. It's either going to be Witherspoon or Hayden, as we've talked about before on the show. And Witherspoon is younger, so to me, it's an easy decision. If they decide that they're going to do the Greg Lloyd thing and re-sign Hayden instead, that'd be a mistake.
Yeah. Ryan, where do you fall on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. I'd rather re-sign Witherspoon and Millette. And, Joe Hayden, thank you for your time here. Like we tried, did really well. But, thank you for your service and for your time. But this, we got to get younger and yeah.
I'm right with you. I'm in the same place.
They need to draft a slot corner this year. Personally,
well, and that's where I was just going to go.
Also, it's deep. Yeah. It's deep. It's a cornerback is deep this year. I think that they can. Yeah, they'll be fine.
There's some really intriguing guys. Yeah,
they don't have a good history of developing corners.
No, they don't. But you can get good value at slot corner, typically in the 2nd, even 3rd round.
Mm-hmm.
The boundary guys are the guys the shutdown guys are the guys that go early. Those are the guys that go in the 1st. So, they're harder to come by.
Yeah, Ian, I know, much like your linebacker piece, you did the thing on the cornerbacks, not long ago about how the Steelers just don't draft well.
And it's not just the Steelers; it's everybody. So since 2016. 2/3 of the Pro Bowl corners were not on their rookie contracts, which basically means they were either on their original team and got extended, like your Patrick Petersons, or they were guys that got signed somewhere else in free agency.
Yeah.
Veteran corners in this league, cornerback might have one of the biggest learning curves of any position in the NFL, that it's harder to transition from college to the pros just because there's so much. NFL receivers are so crafty in what they do that veteran corners, yes, they're expensive, but they're absolutely worth it. I mean, you saw the huge difference in our defensive backfield when we brought in Joe Hayden and then Steven Nelson, right? Guys who are veterans and had played a few years in the league. And Nelson hadn't had a superb career before he came here, but just that experience in the league makes a huge difference. I do agree that, yes, you can find slot corners in the draft and, you can get good rookie slot corners. But, other than that, even with the boundary guys, like if you're not getting a guy in the top 40, it's really not worth it to go after a boundary guy. It's very rare that a boundary guy is like a Richard Sherman that you find later in the draft. They can come in and play immediately. It's extremely rare, actually, historically.
Yeah.
So top 40 basically for the boundary guys in the draft if you're going to take one, which is basically a first round pick for us, considering our average pick during the Kevin Colbert era is like 22nd or 23rd. And that's the other thing too, right? Like typically the top 2 or 3 corners are already off the board by the 15th overall pick, and we haven't had a top 15 pick in how many years since Ben, right? So it's like you're either taking, by the time the Steelers come around, you're either taking the 4th or 5th best corner in the draft, or you're looking at another position. So, I mean, the big miss obviously was taking Artie Burns instead of taking Xavier Howard. But, nevertheless, this is the one position. I'm usually a draft and develop guy across the board. This is the one position I'm like, no, don't draft corners, spend it in free agency, get corners that have experience in the league. I'm all for it.
Ryan, you were there when Senquez Golson was there, right?
Yeah.
What can you tell us about him?
Because he's like 5'6".
He was a guy that there was there was so much potential around him, but he couldn't stay healthy. Was it more than that?
No. Yeah, and I know I want to say this on the record. Jarvis Jones and Senquez Golson. Jarvis Jones, wonderful young man, super nice, like just one of the most super respectful. Like it just sucked that it didn't turn out well. Same with Senquez Golson. Very, very, very. He was very quiet. Went about his business. Hard worker. I remember that training camp after he was hurt. When he hurt, I think it was his shoulder was the second time.
Yeah.
Whatever injury it was, like he was in tears and I usually didn't get too emotionally involved in it, but I'm not gonna lie, I remember at training camp he got hurt and he knew he was hurt, and
he was a former baseball kid. He's a good athlete.
Yeah, and I mean he was just all over the ball at Mississippi his senior year or whatever year it was, and it just sucked. But I remember he was crying in the cart, and I was like, shit, that definitely those are the moments where you're like, wow,
what do you say?
He already had, I think what was his first? It was his leg, and then it was his shoulder.
He had lower body, and then he had upper body.
Yeah, and it was just shit. I mean, you can't account, you can't plan for that, right? You draft especially in the early rounds, you draft the person thinking that they're always going to be healthy, right? You don't go into this thing, and I know he did have a little bit of an injury history, but both him, Senquez and Jarvis were super nice young men, and they were good teammates, and they loved the game. It just didn't work out for them in different ways.
Let me move to safeties here, guys. I think it's safe to say that Minka is in line to get an extension, and there was some scuttlebutt this week. I think Ed Bouchette was talking about the fact that, it could be something like TJ Watt where it gets into the training camp type of thing. Ben, what do you do with Terrell Edmonds? You try to bring him back?
Try.
Go elsewhere?
But try to bring him back at an affordable number. Say long-term deal that pays somewhere in the neighborhood of let's call it $7 million a year, which a lot of Steelers fans are absolutely going to object to. What, are you kidding me? He sucks. Blah blah blah. No, He's a starting caliber, strong safety. He's just not a star, which is what you wanted because he was drafted in the first round.
Absolutely.
And he's not that guy. So I get it. He's not going to make the big money. He's not going to be one of these guys that makes $15 million a year. But half of that, sure, I can see it.
Yeah. Ian, thoughts on him, but then also, did Trey Norwood do enough to make you think he could be a depth guy?
Trey Norwood is definitely a depth guy, but Trey Norwood is not a strong safety.
Right.
Trey Norwood is much better as a center fielder, or actually he played pretty well as a slot corner too. Like covering guys, within the first 7 yards of the line of scrimmage, showed a little bit of ability there. But I think too, you don't want him to have Sean Davis syndrome, right? You don't want to overwhelm him with information and try and make him do too much. You don't want to be like, okay, you're our backup free safety, right, and you have to learn the slot corner position also, which is what they tried to do with Sean Davis his first year and just overwhelmed him with information. It was way too much. So yeah, I think Norwood has potential as a depth guy, but he's much more of a true free safety. That said, using Norwood as a free safety also in 3 safety alignments frees you up to use Minka as more of a rover type player, and you can move him around a little bit more, try and get him in some of those robber positions, things like that, where he can make plays in the middle of the field, which is great for Minka. So I think Norwood continuing to see snaps is good because he is versatile enough to do some things. But if I'm going to spend $7 million a year on a safety, I'm going after like Jordan Whitehead from Tampa. I'm going after, somebody, and Jordan Whitehead might command more than that. Marcus May from the Jets is definitely going to command more than that. Yeah. But I mean, those guys are the top of the market.
If you can get Jordan Whitehead at $7 million a year and you don't do that, so there's something wrong with your front office.
Yeah. Well, okay. Right. Maybe I'll put it this way. If we're going to spend money on a strong safety, I'd rather go after somebody that can tackle better in the open field than Terrell Edmonds. And that's my biggest knock on Edmonds. Yes, he's healthy. He's available. He can be out there and play.
Sean Davis could tackle in the open field, but he couldn't cover anybody to save his life.
Yeah. And well, yeah. And yeah. I mean,
they tried to move him to free safety. It was like,
they did. They moved him around all over the place that first year. Yeah.
No, they moved him around late. Before they got Minka, he was playing free safety. Beginning of the season.
It just seemed like he was everywhere. I don't know that he ever settled in anywhere, but
no, he did.
Be that as it may.
And I mean, Jesse Bates is going to be a free agent. The Bengals will probably bring him back. Justin Reed's going to be a free agent, but Houston probably brings him back. So, guys that we liked in the draft process that the year they took Edmonds are going to hit the market also, but may not hit the market also. But, we'll see. Tampa's the reason I brought up Whitehead, not only is he a local guy, Central Valley High School, but also
shout out.
Yeah. got to give shout outs to my Whitfield guys. But also that Tampa's cap situation is a little bit tighter than the Bengals or Houston's cap situation.
That's also true. Yeah.
So,
Ryan, any final thoughts on the safety position?
No, I mean, I would real quick. I would try to re-sign Terrell Edmonds,
Miles Killebrew.
Yeah, and then you got to re-sign Miles Killebrew. He's probably their best special teamer.
Great special team.
Absolutely.
Huge splash plays this year.
Yep.
And then this is a random thought, but man, they went Artie Burns, Sean Davis back to back, but they've also went Ryan Shazier, Stephon Tuitt back to back, and then TJ Watt, Juju Smith-Schuster back to back. So it's just like, I understand sometimes they miss, but they also do pretty good. I just, and then in that same draft with Davis and Burns, they had Javon Hargrave as a third who has made a lot of money with the Eagles, and then they had Tyler Matakevich in the 7th round, who's a staple on the Buffalo Bills special.
Yes, he is.
Good special teamer.
Yep. So they do miss, but they make them do a lot. So
it's going to be fascinating here as we get down. Like I said, we're about 2 weeks from free agency, the new league year kicking off, and everything. I'm just kind of reading the notes here and stuff, but That's what we want to get into tonight. We're going to focus next week. We'll start focusing much more on the draft. We're going to have a lot more information on it once these guys perform. The quarterbacks were up tonight, and I can already tell you that Malik Willis has a really big arm. The problem is he's not real accurate. I can tell you that. Whereas Kenny Pickett, not nearly the arm, but he was pretty accurate tonight from what I saw. And of course has small hands. But anyway, we're going to get out of here for tonight.
Don't like his velocity on the outside throws, though.
It's Mason Rudolph-esque, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not super impressive.
It's got this little bit of a I like
like Ben.
Yeah. By the way, happy birthday to Big Ben. He turned 40 years young yesterday. Former quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. I hate saying former. Anyway, that's it for these guys. Make sure you check out the website, steelcityblitz.com, and check us out on Twitter at SCBlitz. Of course, the podcast is at SCB_podcast, and we are all on the Twitters and the Instas and all that other stuff too. So thanks again for listening. Please make sure, take time, leave us a review, leave us a comment. Some of you are great at it. We love it.
Give us some feedback. Let us know how much Mark sucks. I'm fine with you.
It's all the hate.
That is a risk anyway. I'm willing to let him take.
How drunk am I that I don't know that? Did I not get it right?
You got it right. You were just like, what's our podcast Twitter handle?
It's Thursday. It's been a long week. Anyway, this is Steel Dad signing off on the SCB Steelers Podcast, presented by DEK Roofing Incorporated. And hey, go Steelers.
Ravens suck.